I am here with Kate Wilson. Thank you so much for coming. Uh, Kate is the author of the Substack Kate Wilson Has Zero Fucks to Give, which is probably one of the great Substack titles. You review films, and in your words, hold filmmakers and artists to a standard they very rarely meet. You're also the author of a novel called Prospects. You're co-founder of Call It, which is a workforce culture app, which helps businesses create safer work environments. And you just launched Off Entertainment and are starting to produce films.
Yes.
And for your topic, you have chosen the zero one-star review.
Yeah.
I'm going
It's
to start this.
great.
Okay. Yeah. So why the zero one-star review?
I'm a great lover of the 0 or 1 star review. Um, and I don't think that we should look down on them or be scared of them, scared of either receiving them or of issuing them. I think we've ended up in a very confusing place in culture whereby the people that we allow to comment on culture has become so very narrow, and their voices are much lesser than the marketing machine that is selling us the culture. So, particularly when you look at feature films and sort of big studio budget films, we're very confused between what is cultural criticism and what is critical discourse that is being fed into the system by the marketing machine.
Yes.
And I think it's really imperative that we get comfortable, really, as creative people, as artists, with receiving a 1 star review, with acknowledging when we've done pretty crappy work, which we're all capable of doing,
Yeah.
and judge and be judged. I will allow people to read my novel and give me the feedback that they want to give me. But I think
I have
we're
started
really in a
reading.
bit of
I just want
thank
to
you.
say I started reading it. It's very good so far.
Thank you so much. I think that, it's not really schadenfreude. It's not about just wanting to see these greats of Hollywood stumbling on their hubris. It
Yeah.
really is about recognizing that sometimes this amazing miracle of filmmaking doesn't quite happen. And if we can't point at those examples, then how can we really celebrate when it does happen, when it all comes together?
Yeah. But you clearly, like from your Substack, like you take reviews seriously. I think, I believe. I mean,
I
like,
take the process seriously. I don't take myself very seriously. However, I do absolutely believe in my opinion and that my opinion has value. And one of the reasons why I actually moved from sort of the Facebook arena onto Substack was because the engagement loop is much easier to manage on Substack. So on Facebook, I was struggling with an awful lot of mansplaining.
yes.
Really, if I put forward an opinion, I was told time and time again that actually my opinion was incorrect. I'd misunderstood the film. My opinion wasn't valid. I was angry. I was jealous. I was this, that, and the other, where really it was just my opinion. And actually, my Substack is often more about something I'm experiencing in the world than the film per se. I tend to use my personal Substack, my personal criticism, as ways of watching a film to better understand the world in which I, as an individual, am living. And so, I don't particularly want to persuade anyone around to my point of view. I use the star rating really because it's a kind of shortcut to tell people whether or not you like the movie.
Yeah.
Um, but I try to keep it relatively light. And actually, in theory, it's supposed to be funny.
I've read some reviews and I like them very much. And
Thank you.
yes, you have a lot of humor to your writing. But like I guess what I'm getting at is, um, you put a lot of thought before you get to the stars. Uh, I think a lot of people associate the zero one-star rating with like kind of like hate watching. Like there's no like you're coming at it from like a point of holding artists accountable for their
Yes.
work, which you know um how do you wrestle with that in a culture that doesn't really align necessarily with that? Obviously, places like Substack are much healthier than others, but yeah, there are a lot of places where those types of reviews just kind of go off the walls.
Well, I think to start with, I come from a place of complete honesty about my opinion about it. I'm not trying to take anyone down. I'm not trying to cancel anybody. Almost everybody who was in a film has done some amazing work at some point in their career and will do again. I'm talking about a film that's released in cinemas. So even if you see something that is truly terrible, it is worth engaging with. And it's also worth acknowledging that I do apply a kind of handicap system. When I say system, it's, it's finger in the air. But if I'm watching a film that is, a multi-million dollar budget, if not hundreds of million dollars on the budget, and big actors that we know are hugely capable of delivering great performances, experienced directors, overhyped screenwriters, et cetera, competent producers, and it comes in as a steaming pile of shit, then I have much less patience for that, even though, there will be many accomplished things about it, no doubt. But that to me is very, very different from somebody who is, you talked with Elliot Grove, I think, about this sort of non-D movement and the ways in which people are having to make films with no budget, very little support, no distribution guaranteed, really having to do all the marketing themselves. For those individuals, I've got, quite a lot more patience to see how they're going to do and what they're going to present us with. And, that part of that is just managing one's expectations. If I go into, let's say a George Clooney, Noah Baumbach film, I have a high expectation of what's going to be delivered in terms of production value, in terms of performance, et cetera. If I go into a film where I've never heard of any of the talent, then I'm a little bit more open to just see what I'm given.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope more people start to watch films with that attitude. But I wonder like culturally, what we basically have IMDb, which has like the 10-star rating. Uh
Yeah.
I think maybe arguably like Rotten Tomatoes was almost like a reaction to that because it's just, like a 0-star rating on a scale of 10, if it's just like, a hate rating. Maybe that tried to oversimplify it, but Rotten Tomatoes is not very reliable for its own reasons. I guess Letterboxd is probably the most, uh, you know, this is the 5-star rating. But even with Letterboxd, I recently saw like someone posting like, this is what 5 stars means to me, 4.5 star, and like they had to describe. It's like for
Right.
everyone, it's different. Um,
Yeah.
I wonder, is there like a platform that you think is, reviewing films in the best way, or is there something that we could do to improve any of these platforms?
No, there's absolutely nothing to be done about it. It's, it's a wild west out there, and I think that's kind of as it should be.
Yeah.
I do think that reviewing and criticism is in and of itself an art form.
Yeah.
And so finding your space, it's like finding your platform, finding your streamers, like then finding the people that criticize the work that you do is part of that as well. And I really hope that even when I deliver a damning review of a film, it should be noted that I went to the cinema to see that film. I will watch anything and everything. I think the effort that has been put in, I will absolutely return that effort. And I will never review a film that I haven't properly watched or really pass much comment about other than a quip or something about something I haven't entirely watched and given some consideration to. And I am in awe of filmmakers. I don't pretend that it is an easy thing to do. I think that filmmakers are the gods of our ungodly world, and I revere them and I revere the whole process of making films, and I bow down to them. However, like any of our gods, once more I have to stare them in the face and say, you got to do better. You got to do better, and this is perhaps how. Or you've got to do better because remember how brilliant this was, and pointing back at some of the things they've done before. And I think that that is really important. Nobody is making a 10-star, 5-star, whatever you want to call it, film every single time out of the gates. And I think we do, one of the difficult things I find is that I'm always tempted because we love hearing behind the scenes stories, but to go to the screenings that have panels. I'm a member of BAFTA, and so really from about early September until the BAFTA Awards in a couple months, it's just constant film watching with the filmmakers trying to sell you and pitch you their film for awards.
Yeah.
And this is a space in which you see the joie de vivre and the opportunity of filmmaking draining out of the faces of the people that are trying to sell the fare that they really have lost belief in and lost faith in. And I really feel for them at that time. And there are many a film that I've loved, and then the panels completely put me off it
Hmm.
because the kind of very forced nature of them trying to sell you their film and pretend that a, very good film is a work of genius kind of puts you off the whole process. So I actually really try to resist now too many Q&As and panel screenings and that type of thing because I prefer to watch the film in a normal cinema with other people that are paying for their tickets. I go physically to the cinema all the time. I mean, literally, probably on average about 4 times a week.
You, it's so refreshing to hear that. I guess maybe I think in Europe it's a little bit different, from my
I'm very
understanding.
unusual. I don't have a TV at home,
Yeah, but
so I can
even
watch
so,
anything.
I know like I don't know about England particularly, but I know like France has like their theatrical window is completely different than like U.S. theatrical releases are in trouble right now. And there's not a lot of people who who have that practice. But just to hear you say like right now, indie filmmakers are so expected to be marketing and participating in Q&As and being so like actively a part of selling their film.
Yeah.
That even for me to like bring this up is probably gonna that I don't think it's the best thing. And I wish more people were understanding of that maybe like the artist should just do their art.
I'm sort of amazed that in the digital world, where you could have a single junket and get your actor in front of a camera with every single, entertainment news program across the world within a couple of afternoons. I'm amazed that we're flying people all over the world for premieres,
Yeah.
for schmoozy events. I actually think it's a complete waste of money. Um, I do sometimes wonder if there's a contractual position whereby certain films with a certain cast um, agree through contracts to put the actors forward for awards.
Yeah.
So even when it is to any normal person, you can see that this is not worked. And it's still being sold to us as brilliant, 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 brilliant. And that marketing machine is incredibly powerful. We know how powerful it is. So then people are going into a cinema and they're actually not using their own eyes and ears to experience the film. They're not responding in real time. They're actually going in there prepared
Yeah.
to like it and not thinking that's an alternative to liking it. And this happens in the theater and in like Broadway theater as well. I
Yeah.
went to see a production last time I was in New York and it was a truly awful production, I thought. I won't say what it was. But the thing that I found very confusing was that the actors, as they came onto the stage, there were very famous actors in it. The audience was going crazy before they said a word. And I thought, let them earn. The applause comes at the end when they've done the performance and we've decided if it was good. This applause has no value. This is you going to buy the ticket knowing that you intend to applaud rapturously, regardless of what you're given.
Should you not call them out, or do you think anonymity?
You mean call out the audiences or call
No,
out
no,
the
like what the production was.
I'll tell you it was art. It was
Okay.
Yasmin Rez's art with James Corden and Bobby Cannavale and
Yes.
I can't remember who the other person was.
I only urge you to do that because in the spirit of trying to hold
In the spirit of I do tend to call people out, and I have written about it, so
and
someone could have
hold them
figured it
in.
out. And I do think that, ironically, Yasmina Rez's play is about populism versus elitism within the art world. And so, am I the elitist that was sitting in there saying, "Fuck's sakes, populace, just sit down and stop applauding for everybody"? Like this is, you're making it feel like it's a circus act, like it's an elephant performing that we're going to clap for regardless. So I acknowledge that I could twist myself in quite severe, you know, circles very easily by getting too into that particular conversation about that performance. But it was truly terrible. And I could barely hear the script anyway because everyone was laughing so much and people were on their phones in the theater. So people spending $500 on a theater ticket and then being on their phone. Same within the movies. They're spending what is getting to be really huge prices to go to the cinema.
Yeah.
And really, if you've got a young family, it's very expensive to get to theaters. So we've got to address that in terms of the exhibition space within our industry. But also, we're really struggling with cinema because, in my opinion, when I was young, I would go to the cinema two, three, 4 times a year, and it was a really special treat. And even when we watched TV, if there was a show that we liked, it was on once a week. We had 30 minutes of it once a week, and that was it. And now it's not a limited resource.
Yeah.
And the fact is, supply is if it's you turn on like a tap, if you can have as much of it as you want, as young people can now, you're not going to value it. And so that kind of value of going to the cinema, of having a really limited experience that maybe you dip into, as I said, less than half a dozen times a year, you're not going to value it. So we really need to figure out a way for people to get to the theater with really engage with the experience and recognize that it's a huge privilege to be there. Then you earn the right to criticize it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting dilemma because on one hand we have just way too much content, but the amount of movies that are in theaters has decreased significantly.
Yeah.
Like the options, the amount of options. And I just wanted to bring up one point when you're sort of talking about like these marketing strategies. The worst part about it is, for me, is you hear directors or actors like they have their like story that they say. And so if you end
Oh.
up seeing more than one of these, it's the same story every time. And so it's like, like I was kind of excited to see Paul Thomas Anderson's new movie, but then like I had to hear 18 times that like you spent 20 years writing it and like like the story, there's just so many interviews and they were also unnatural because he's not the type of director who would that's just one recent example where it's just like, what is this? The Marty Supreme one. People love that type of marketing, but it's it gets redundant, repetitive, and it can really, I think, what you're pointing out, like kind of take away from the sort of wide-eyedness of going to the cinema, and it's a shame.
I completely agree. It takes away from the wide-eyedness, the surprise,
Yeah,
and the real like pure joy of receiving something when you've not really been told exactly what it is and how you must receive it. You
yeah,
must receive it this way. And if you receive it in a different way, you are either incapable of understanding this great filmmaker, or you are, unintelligent, or you're biased, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that to me is a huge loss. And I think you're right. The fact is, something like One Battle After Another, like that is an absolutely massive budget from a studio for a Paul Thomas Anderson film, and I think he's paying the price in retelling the
yeah,
same story over and over and
exactly.
over and over again. But at what point does the marketing machine for what is ostensibly a auteur-driven film
Right.
overtake that story? If we think of an auteur filmmaker as being a proper independent auteur filmmaker, as having a singular vision about the film that
Yeah.
is driven forward. Of course, it's a collaborative medium, but I think you know what I mean.
Yes.
At what point is that very delicate thing in jeopardy because of the marketing machine that is shoving it down everybody's throats? The comparison would be, at what point do you stop trying to serve Michelin-starred food at a fast food restaurant? Like
That's a
at a,
Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry.
you know, no, you go ahead.
It's a great metaphor because my immediate response was, well, films are like kind of they're cemented in time and like so yes, the marketing could ruin it, but the film is still there. But you're right, it's an experience. And I think that's why going to a restaurant is a really great metaphor because the way it's presented, you could have the same meal in two different ways and it's going to be a completely different experience. And that's a really, really interesting way to look at experiencing a film.
Yeah, completely. Equally at that restaurant, if you've got to wait outside in the cold for 2 hours to get in there, for some people that makes it a better meal because
Yeah.
the competition was there. For some people, it really doesn't. Like they wanted their, evening with their glass of champagne and whatever else they were going to have. So I do think that that's really important. And I definitely have different experiences of films when I watch them once, twice, three times, and over whatever period of time. And also with whom I watch them. I've got two daughters. When I watch films with them, particularly films that I've already loved, it's so interesting to see how my perspective changes on them a little bit, or how I understand things a bit better, or realize I may have misunderstood something or undervalued something that's within the film. And I'm very happy to go two, three, four times to see the same film
Yeah.
in the cinema.
I
It's always a different experience for me.
That's great. I'm curious, we don't have too much more time, but it's a question I really wanted to ask you. It's very subjective uh, art, obviously. And I guess what I wanted to ask you is, how do you feel about films that bring subjective joy, uh, even though they are not, you know, technically great films? to just be more transparent, I mean like the good bad movie. Like, does that get a 0 stars, or because it was enjoyable? Uh, what are your, do you have
So I
any?
think there are two.
Yeah,
There are two versions of that, and to start with, I think I will watch anything. I
I,
generally
the
enjoy it. I enjoy that process of having my subjective experience, whatever that is. And I it's relatively recently in my life that I've been like, oh, you know what? I'm actually going to use that joy of that subjective experience, regardless of whether the film is one, two, three, four, 5 stars, to write a little story about the world in which I'm living and how that film fits into it. That's really what I do with my reviews more than anything else. They're entirely subjective. I don't try to persuade anyone around to my position, and I won't be dissuaded from my position either. I just, I feel like we should all have that experience. In terms of films that are so bad they're good,
yeah,
I where they're just like terrible films, but they're kind of fun to watch. There's a whole range of that type of thing. I think anything that ends up being good, no matter how bad it had to be to get you back there, watch it, enjoy it, love every second. I watch a lot of kind of, I absolutely hate the phrase, but guilty pleasure type of
yeah,
crap reality TV. It's like it helps me. I understand the world so much better. I understand men so much better because of Vanderpump Rules than I ever could have by doing like a psychology degree, probably. Um, in terms of films that are hugely flawed
yeah,
and that still feel like art, those are my favorites.
yeah,
Usually, my favorite film is where I feel like the filmmaker has had nowhere near enough budget, not good enough actors, the sets are kind of weird, they filmed in the wrong location, no music budget, so the score's off and the soundtrack, you've never heard of the songs, but their ambition, you can feel it in the fabric of the film. Um, it's a bit like when you hear a diva singing and the high note just cracks
yeah,
because you know that that instrument is being pushed to its absolute limit. And so I love a film where I feel, oh, it didn't quite get there. I love those films and I love those filmmakers. So probably my favorite films are where it's like a 4 star review because of course there are areas where it could be so much better, but that I absolutely came away desperate to see what that filmmaker does next and desperate to probably watch it again and see if I get something different out of it the next time.
yeah. Well, we did it our 20 minutes, but I want to just like echo that sentiment because I feel the same way, and I never know how to talk about. There's an episode that I did on reality TV that will be coming soon that I think you'd appreciate. I think the discourse about guilty pleasures, about, I hate saying good, bad movies. I don't know what the right, or movies that are so bad they're good. Like but they are good if you're enjoying them.
Yeah.
Like I think I hope that we can find like better rhetoric and like a better way to sort of have this discourse because um, I think that the way that you are approaching these like ratings, by holding different films to different standards basically is really integral to um, like how people enjoy things. I don't know if you articulated it much better than me, but I'm basically saying like I hope the rhetoric changes and the discourse changes so that people can go see something that isn't expected to be, one battle after another. There's like masterpiece, but they can still walk away with a 4 star wonderful experience with flaws and all.
There's nothing better than going into a film essentially blind and not having any expectations of it, or as few expectations as possible. I mean, obviously, in this day and age, you usually know a little bit, but it is a wonderful, wonderful thing to allow the cinema to surprise you. And and it's a huge privilege. We must make sure we don't lose it. I mean, that's the thing. Like my favorite place to be is in a cinema in the dark. Give me some smoked almonds and a glass of wine, and I am like in heaven. It is the best place ever to be. So the more time I get to spend there, the better. So even when I see a crap film, it's not been that bad of a day. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I think
Yeah.
we have to make sure that we invest in independent cinema, invest in new voices. We must give feedback to the films that aren't working, only so that those people can try to give us better stories, and also so they don't have to waste so much time trying to sell us something that they clearly don't believe in at a certain point.
Yeah, and just to look back on your quote of that you hold filmmakers and artists to a standard they very rarely meet. You are, I've discovered, also like the biggest champion to filmmakers. So
I really am, and I hope that that comes through
it
in
does.
my reviews and things. As much as I can be unbelievably snarky, the subtext is I went to the cinema, I saw this film, I engaged with it fully. It impacts my life. I've given it something, and I want that kind of reciprocity with filmmakers and with artists. And yeah, more of it. I would love to just be watching films the rest of my life. So we need to keep making them.
Well, it certainly came through in this conversation. So thank you
Great.
so much. I really
So
appreciate
nice to
it.
talk to you.
So nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.